hear me out there? Give me a thumbs up. All right. Thank you. All right, welcome to the June 14th, 2021 Board of Directors meeting for MSAD 51. We would first like to acknowledge that today is Flag Day, and so Kevin is going to give a little bit of history on that, and then we'll move into recognition.
It's a lot of pressure, Tyler. You know, this really is one of my favorite times of year, not just because we don't have to shovel our way out of the driveway, but as you head into either of these communities, it is just tremendous to see the streets lined with flags. And so this being June 14th, each year, of course, it's Flag Day. This has been in place since May 30th, 1916, when President Wilson issued a proclamation establishing that this would be National Flag Day. And the significance of the day is commemorating the adoption of the Stars and Stripes as the official flag of the United States. It's one of those holidays that's oftentimes overlooked because you sit between some of these holidays like Memorial Day and the 4th of July where people take a Monday off. But the significance is no less diminished. It's a wonderful thing to fly the
this evening to recognize you both. So we have Kate Perrin, who will be leaving us after 2 full terms on the board, which equals 6 years. She was also vice chair for 1 and chair for 2. Is that correct? All right. I wrote a whole bunch of stuff in a card on that table for you that I will let you I'll let you read that and keep my comments to myself, but I just want to say thank you. It's a little odd to think that you are not going to be here going forward. It's going to be hard to replace you. So I'd like to open it up for Kate, and then we'll go to Margot, if anybody would like to say anything. Anybody would like to say anything for Kate?
I think Kevin first, and then I'll go.
Well, that's a lot of pressure again to go first, so allow me to continue to monopolize the meeting. Kate, I'd like to thank you for your contributions, not just to this board, but to the community. Your willingness to ask difficult questions and put yourself in challenging spots in the face of what you knew would be an adversarial response is something that I think has spoken very well of the time that you've done on this community, for this board and for this community. We haven't always agreed on a number of things, but it's refreshing to have somebody who can have a different opinion, be deeply rooted in that opinion, and be able to have the friendly relationship that we've had for nearly 6 years. So thank you for your service to the community.
I guess, Kate, my words will be, I guess, shorter than that. I appreciate that you encouraged me to run. We had, my daughter was in Kate's Girl Scout troop, and she really sat down and talked to me about running for the board and what it meant, and she has such conviction for the school and this community, and it's so admirable all the time that you've dedicated, and I thank you.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just wanted to say thank you. You welcomed me with the board to the board with kindness, but also an expectation to do work and do a good job. And so I just really appreciate it. Your passion, your dedication just absolutely comes through. So thank you for your service.
I would just say I really enjoyed working with Kate. You know, we let it all hang out as far as that we held nothing back. We were completely honest with each other, and I felt very, very comfortable giving her, and felt comfortable giving her any thought I had in my head, some that probably were a little crazier than others, but I just, you were very good to work with, and I'm going to miss you a lot.
I started on the school board thinking that I knew pretty much how it all worked after going to school board meetings for 15 years, 20 years, and I learned pretty quickly that it doesn't really play out the way you imagine from the outside. Kate, you were very supportive, compassionate. When I needed to step down and thought that I should resign, you assured me that my position would be held for me, and that it would be ready when I came back. And I that was unexpected, and it just shows the depth of character that you have, and I've been proud to work with you.
I mean, oh, okay. I didn't really get to connect with you too much this year, unfortunately, and I think we would have been able to connect more if everything wasn't remote and online. But you always brought a very positive ambiance to the board, and I liked that a lot. And you were very welcoming. The board itself is quite intimidating from a student's perspective, but you're very welcoming. So I'll miss that, and next year's representative will probably miss that, but they won't know what they're missing.
I want to say, I think, Kate, you're the longest-serving member at this moment on the board. It's going to be really difficult to not have you on the board. You have brought so much to the board over the years, and I think one of the most important things that I have really appreciated is just a sense of boardsmanship, and, you know, where the board needs to be and what the role of the board is in the community is absolutely critical, at least in my role. So I appreciate it. And half of the time that you've been on the board, you've served in leadership of the board, and even after you've been off the board, you've also helped with that, and I really appreciate it. And just some selfish angle, I'm sorry that you're going. I thought that you might take another 1 year, you know, stint or something on the board, but thank you so much for everything and all the advice over the years and all of that, and I hope you can still offer that from the side. So.
Tyler, do you mind if I say a few quick things?
Oh, please.
This has just been such an immense honor. I believe that for these 6 years, I've represented the finest school district in Maine, and I think I've led alongside the most impeccable administrative team in our state as well. So even when Superintendent Porter and I have disagreed, it has been known to happen. I always knew that he was the best human and professional for this job and for our district. I believe the same for all our building administrators as well. Our teaching, facility, transportation, administrative support, food service, all of our staff at MSAD 51 are absolutely unparalleled, and they represent our district just so well with their thoughtfulness, their expertise, and their work ethic. I'm just so proud to have served for each and every one of them. When I look ahead to what I think and what I hope to see from the next board of directors, I hope to see the same level of nonpartisan camaraderie and mutual respect that this board has. I have found inspiring and meaningful discourse with each and every human that sits at this table. So again, thank you to everyone. Public education should not be a national battleground where false information and biased rhetoric is served. We've seen the consequences of that, and I just need to state that this behavior should have no home in Cumberland and North Yarmouth. Public education, in my opinion, should be focused solely on what is best for our students. So with that, I welcome the upcoming strategic plan and its focus on what truly matters, and that's student mental health and well-being after weathering a global pandemic, thoughtful academic instruction that garners tangible results, adequate learning spaces and buildings, and preparing students for the world outside our small community. Over the past 6 years on this board, I've noticed that some people spend their days in service to themselves, their own freedoms, and their own opinions. Others live in service to their community and to greater humanity, and I hope that over the last 6 years, I have represented the latter. So I'm going to miss you all. I will be no stranger. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I hope you're not a stranger.
I can't stay away.
And then to Margot. So Margot is finishing up her first term, and she is moving on to care for her family and the rest of life that happens outside of the school board. Margot, I will say that you have met every decision from this board with so much empathy and heart, and I admire that about you. I think you and I have exchanged tears when we were talking about how do we reopen, when we were talking last fall, how do we do this? How do we balance everybody's opinions and needs? And I just really appreciated you holding that space during these conversations. So thank you, and I'm gonna miss you big time. But we still get to see each other because we live in the same town. So please, anyone, if you'd like to say anything for Margot, go ahead.
Well, I just enjoyed serving with Margot when the Greeley Center of the Arts Committee was going, and she was very instrumental in getting that going and leading it in a good manner. And I think the most important thing, one of the things that I want to do is to continue the work that you started, and hopefully as a civilian you'll be willing to be one of the civilian members of that committee, so that we can utilize this facility to what we thought it could be when it was built. So thank you very much for your leadership on that, and I've enjoyed working with you.
Madison, and then Kevin.
Well, you have been so welcoming and supportive, and I think that you were one of the people, you and Tyler were probably the two that reached out to me the most, and I really appreciate that a lot. And you are just such like a positive person, even if it's something that you obviously might not agree with. You seem just so like, I don't care, I'm going to bring some sort of positivity into this, and it always kind of warmed my heart. And I love talking to you just as a person, not even just as a board member. But I hope to bump into you at Estabrooks again. Thank you.
Kevin?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, it's tough to see you move on, Margot, but one of the things, as you were joining the board, and even before, I'd always heard your name kicking around in the community. Certainly I heard it at the House because of your passion for everything in the arts community. And what you've done even before this role here to be a positive impact on this town is often overlooked or maybe not even seen, but it's always been there. Your unique perspective as a parent, as a grandparent, as somebody who has one of those flags out in front of your house, where you care about things that happen here. And then, as Peter said, this building and the way that you've been able to help this evolve into what it has become, ideally will continue with your stewardship of it into the future, and doing the great communications that you brought to this board. Thank you so much for your contributions to the community.
Margot, you are one of the most thoughtful and thorough people that I have ever met and worked alongside. I knew that no matter what was going on in your life, and you had a lot of really difficult, painful things happen in your world while you were serving, and it never really affected your work ethic. And I knew that you were going to read everything and think about every side of every issue that came up in front of us. And I was just always so impressed by you. So same as Tyler, I have a feeling we'll still see each other, but you'll be missed up on the stage.
It's hard to go towards the end of this, but Margot, you're just so upbeat and bring such vibrancy and positivity to these meetings and just to our community, and I so appreciate that. Thank you.
I agree with every kind thing that was said about you, Margot. The other thing, I just thoroughly enjoyed every interaction, conversation, one-on-one in the communication committee. You just bring a lightness and a joy to the work that doesn't bring down any of the high level of competence that you have as well. And so I just really thoroughly enjoyed working with you.
Yeah, Margot, I just want to say thank you for your thoroughness on things like communication committee, things that come before that committee, the junior board representatives. That was just a recent thing that we worked on together, and you just have a great way of analyzing things and kind of distilling things down to the most important pieces on anything that you're looking at. And I really appreciate that guidance that you've given the board on those things. You have a real calmness about you that I think really instills confidence, and really going to miss that on the board. So thank you so much for that.
So we have a gift. I'm going to walk over a gift to each one of you, but thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's not enough of a word, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so So our next item is approval of minutes. Do I have a motion for the June 7th, 2021 minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Great. Madison was not here. Thank you. All right, and then we'll move on to public comment. I see quite a bit of people in the public this evening. Please approach the podium. I will have a timer here, and I'll do my best to not awkwardly interrupt you, but please let's just make sure we give time for everybody for 3 minutes.
Am I required to wear my mask as I speak?
Yes. That goes away very soon, though.
Is there a timer that I can see, or?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh,
But
okay.
I will start yours now.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Allie Ford. Since the June 1st, 2020 equity letter, we have repeatedly heard from the district leadership that MSAD 51 is not teaching critical race theory. And I believe that this is the crux of the problem. Critical race theory is a theory, and like all theories, it should be taught, discussed, analyzed, and challenged. It should be compared to other theories, perspectives, and worldviews, and this isn't happening. There is no dialogue. No competing perspectives are being heard or considered. Critical race theory is not being taught. It's worse than that. It's being assumed. It's the premise behind the 2020 letter, the DOE joint statement, and now the draft equity policy. Critical race theory is steeped in words like anti-racism, systemic racism, dismantle whiteness, white supremacy, and decolonizing. Their meanings are not being debated, just assumed. The basis for all critical theory in education is the dialogue and debate of competing ideas and perspectives. Professor George of Princeton states, when one ideology monopolizes the conversation and no other perspectives are considered, then education has been replaced with the vilest of counterfeits, indoctrination. For the last year, I have repeatedly called and written equity committee chairs, voicing my concerns over the lack of transparency and the lack of dialogue. I've urged the committee to open the meetings to public and provide meeting minutes. Monthly, I've called the committee chairs seeking information about what has been discussed. I've read the donated books, and I've read the required reading list for the high school. In all my correspondence this past year, not once has there been mentions of the development of this draft equity policy. I feel blindsided. The public has not been involved in this process, and most of our community has no idea this is even going on. The policy committee today, the meeting today at 5:15, I know 8 of us who couldn't even get in, and I tried all 3 venues. Implementation of this policy will do just what the June 2020 letter proposed. It will dismantle our community as we know it. This policy will likely restrict free speech and conscience, resulting in lawsuits, as we are now seeing in Loudoun County, Virginia. It will change hiring practices. Our biological girls may lose all that was gained through Title IX, their level playing fields in sports, not to mention their privacy. But worst of all, it sets up some arbitrary monitoring system to judge someone else's intents based upon perceptions, not reality, all in the name of anti-discrimination. The ideas behind this are untenable. Adopting this policy will only bring more division and pain to an already broken community. The Equity Committee needs some new players, and I, for one, have done everything within my capability to be one of those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Casey Ford, a North Yarmouth resident, homeowner, and taxpayer. Thank you, board member Desmond, for that talk on the Flag Day. And I've got to admit, I think this is the first board meeting and first time in a school that I haven't seen the American flag represented, and it's a little strange to me. I'm a parent of 3 children. One graduated from Greeley High. One was transferred to a private school with in-class learning, and one is still at Mabel I. Wilson. I consider myself a stakeholder in the MSAD 51 school system, and as such was surprised to see a draft policy of this magnitude having gone through committee and now being presented to your board without, to my knowledge, public input. After a cursory reading, I have concerns. There will be associated costs that need to be determined. There is language that needs to be discussed, and I'm really wondering why this policy is necessary. For instance, Section D8 defines opportunity gaps. Does MSAD 51 have disparities in the delivery of educational and extracurricular opportunities among different student groups that has led to different academic outcomes? I've not been aware that MSAD 51 was allowing different academic outcomes from different students and find it hard to believe. To answer these questions and further ensure transparency throughout the process of developing a policy that reflects the whole community, I ask your board to table any discussion of this draft policy until the community has had ample opportunity to view, discuss, and comment. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Matt Reynolds. First, thank you to the board for your work in trying to strengthen the community through education of the students. My wife and I have 6 children, and the oldest of whom just graduated this year and had a great time in the Greeley schools. First of all, I would just like to mention, I hope we can have less homework, and I hope that there's a way that we can monitor how much the homework the students are doing, because it seems like my kids spend a ton more time than they need to be doing homework. Also, my children requested that we please consider leaving snow days as snow days instead of remote days next year. I appreciate the MSAD 51 mission and strategic goals as listed in the agenda, promoting education, but as I read about the draft ACA equity plan, I had a few things that I was concerned about. It says to respect, value, and celebrate diversity, and I want to express my opinion that sometimes celebrate diversity remotes in promoting ideologies contrary to those held by students and parents. I have no animosity toward any group. I want to ensure that we are not forcing certain viewpoints upon students and staff and faculty. As I'm sure is the case with you, I've been disheartened by the contention in the community recently. And I hope that the board can promote an environment conducive to learning, and that while we are obviously accepting of all our students, that we're not promoting certain political ideologies over others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jason Record, Cumberland resident for the moment. I asked the board to weigh carefully tonight that we are at a crossroads here, and there is an opportunity to heal this community starting now, tonight. I'd like Jeff and the board to recognize the way the election came out. This town is in fact evenly divided, more or less, on many topics. If we do not accept that and start working for both sides, the atmosphere is not going to get better. Pushing through things on this agenda in the next couple weeks that will persist for a year or two during this lame duck period is not right. Please postpone the chair discussion, or at the very least, strongly consider a change at the helm as a fresh start, right or wrong. Also, why would we push the strategic plan out 2 years versus 1 year coming out of a 100-year pandemic? I would advocate for doing the minimum and that we put some thought into it this summer to potentially make it better and more robust. These things just further contribute to the mistrust in the community. Just an hour ago, at least 8 people tried to get on the policy committee meeting. The link you sent out this morning didn't work. Actually, none of the 3 links worked. You know what the planning board does when technology fails and the public can't attend? We cancel and postpone because people should be able to see the meeting. Further, the ACA equity policy draft is wrong, and it will hurt us all. It has been done with zero diversity of thought. It is based on emotion, not proven empirical studies. This will fundamentally change how our kids look at the world and their opportunities in general. Instead of the world being their oyster, they will ask, why isn't the world doing more for me? Instead of buckling down and working harder, they will simply be victims of the system. I don't want that for any kid. Equity, kindness, inclusion, respect, of course, we can all get behind those things. But has anyone here looked deeper than those words? What books have you read from both sides? The path we are on is not kindness and respect, etc. We are following the path of people with a flawed theory. And these people have their hand in the cookie jar. Why are we following them? This theory is going to hurt us all, especially those that need the most help. This policy bumps right up against critical race theory and certainly lays the foundation that critical race theory can sit upon. Please stop this and let's start the conversation over with a better balanced approach, please.
Hello, my name is Rachel Whitmarsh of North Yarmouth. I am a resident, but I'm also the creator and editor for the website North Yarmouth Free Voice. I created it to be an avenue for encouraging discussion and spreading more news and getting information out to people on a more even and a more complete picture. And as the editor, I do stand behind every story I agree to publish, and I'm committed to updating it when needed. And I was sincere in my statement to you that I would like to present a full picture, and I welcome information from the board. There is genuine concern with the way
I'm
the
sorry,
board...
I don't mean to interrupt, but I would ask that you adjust your microphone because I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. There has been genuine concern with the way the board and all the facets operate. Hence, I've sent questions about the Equity Leadership Steering Committee. There are questions about the membership criteria and application process, things that have created a certain perception. And the committee seems to be operating outside the bounds of oversight in regard to public access. And then tonight, trying to get access and to get a bigger picture, not being able to access the policy committee was unfortunate. Technology, many, many problems. But you don't know me, and I suspect that some people don't have any interest in knowing me, but I have connected with a lot of people recently, and I hope that they can attest that I am very diligent and sincere in my quest for the truth, and I have not published a number of stories that have hit my inbox because I don't feel that they present a clear enough picture, or I just don't see that they would benefit the current community situation. I feel truth and intent must go hand in hand. I feel and see that if you're comfortable because of scrutiny, that's good. Not because I feel you should be feeling badly. This fact deeply pains me. I have spent much of my life trying to see the other point of view and to act accordingly, but it underscores an important fact. And as a resident, I am here to state my opposition to the draft equity policy, or the ACA. The details surrounding its development confirm what I see as a fatal flaw in the proposed policy. It's concerned with application and enforcement. The policy depends entirely on something subjective, and that's perception. For many months, the board has been, seems hostile, and there's been comments tonight about this discord and this conflict from feedback and scrutiny. And I've also received other messages and had conversations with those who feel that they are not part of the collective all that this policy is being crafted to protect. They span a spectrum of opinions, but their experiences are negated by the allegations that those who disagree...
Rachel, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that was 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll post it online.
Good evening. My name is Heather Fackrell, and I'm here tonight to oppose the draft equity policy. My husband and I have 3 boys in the district. Today, they just finished 2nd, 5th, and 6th grade. Recently, my 6th grade son came home from school and very quietly asked me a question regarding something that happened at school that day. He said, "Mom, what is the rainbow stuff at school about?" Knowing my son, I immediately inferred that he kind of knew but wasn't certain and maybe felt uncomfortable enough about what went on that he mustered the courage to ask me. We are open with our children, and we have talked with our son about what it means to be gay. However, he was not familiar with the symbol used to promote gay pride, and so I informed him on that. He then went on to tell me that And I quote, "People who work at the school were handing out rainbow stickers to kids as they entered the school that day," end quote. After we talked and I reflected on this incident, I was left wondering if, while at school that day, my child had felt like Punicello from the story You Are Special by Max Lucado. I wondered, did my son feel like he was walking around all day with gray dot stickers on him, while others wore rainbow gay pride stickers? Did he feel distracted trying to figure out what it all meant and looking to see who was wearing them and who wasn't? I don't know the answers to these questions, but I was saddened to know that my 12-year-old son was put in this situation, and that next year, my son, who has special needs but is in regular education, might have to go through the same thing. I felt very concerned because I know of 2 instances where friends' children have left the civil rights team because civil rights team members were pushing their beliefs on others. I taught elementary school for 10 years before I had children. At that time, and for as long as I have known, teachers have lived by the golden rule principle of treating others the way you want to be treated. I have never seen an incident in all of my years in schools where teachers did not stand up for someone who might be seen as different by classmates. My experience shows me that those who go into teaching want their students to feel accepted for who they are. My religious background is that I am a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We believe in loving all, as we are all children of a heavenly mother and father. It is stated in what we call the Articles of Faith that as a church and as a church member, and I quote, "We claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of our own conscience and allow all men the same privilege. Let them worship how, where, or what they may," end quote. And I would add to that, not worshiping, if that is your choice, but that everyone should be free to act and choose for themselves.
Rachel, that is 3 minutes.
Okay, just that being said, I don't feel it is correct for schools to set a guiding principle other than the golden rule, and I oppose the draft equity policy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Trying to get this thing set up. Doesn't quite want to do it. There it goes. Hi, my name is David Reed. I'm a resident of North Yarmouth. I know Jeff knows me. I find some of the stuff that's gone on recently in the school district to be somewhat sad. I mean, having to put up with all of these new COVID rules and guidelines, it must be taking a toll on students. Aside from that, the state of the board, in my view, is sad right now. I was told that you guys don't even do the Pledge of Allegiance anymore. When I was at the high school, there was a bit of a commotion over teachers forcing students to say the pledge. There was also a state law saying that the school had to say the pledge every day. The natural compromise, of course, was I volunteered to say the Pledge of Allegiance every day, and I made sure that every teacher in that school knew that if someone didn't want to have to stand up and say it, they didn't have to. Because as Americans, we understand that people have a right to protest things, even if they're near and dear to our hearts. What I fear from this diversity policy and from this, I guess you'd say, policy derived from critical race theory or theories similar to it, I don't know quite where it lands, is that it doesn't do anything material to help students. You want to be giving students skills that will help them advance in the world and help them be self-sufficient. I remember the wood shop back when Hosh used to run it. They had great tools there. People could learn practical skills, how to work on their car, how to build things out of metal, how to cast it. Now they've replaced it with a STEM workshop. Yes, there are many things a student can do there, but sometimes they need parts that they could have made in the old wood shop if they had kept it. It's not there anymore. They can't do it. I'm saddened by the lack of American flags. I remember back when they would hold these meetings in the library, they would always have the Maine flag and the American flag front and center. We do live in America. Aside from this, I've lived through what the end point of this policy is at USM. Not a huge fan of it. It provides no justice. It provides an atmosphere where people can't speak their minds. If you go against the orthodoxy, you get crushed by both, rabid ideologues in the student body and rabid ideologues in the administration. I don't want to see that happen to the school that I love. I remember in junior year, I wanted to be on this board. I wanted to represent students whose voices couldn't be heard. The representatives of the student body on this board are chosen by the very administration. Sorry about that. My basic point being is that the concerns of students aren't adequately represented in this whole process. The concerns of parents are. I think that if you polled the student body, you'd find that they're concerned about things like an overload of homework, not
David,
being able to...
that's 3 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. Au revoir.
Good evening. I'm Angela Atkinson-Duena, and I'm a resident of Cumberland. Just in the interest of transparency, I also want to let you know that I'm a professor of educational leadership, and I am one of the people that helped to organize the regional community of practice on equity that MSAD 51 participates in. Tonight, though, I'm really here just as a parent and as a person, a community member. I have 2 children in MSAD 51. I've lived here for 17 years. And I've worked professionally in the field of education for much longer than that. And a really core part of my work has been around educational equity in schools. And I could not be more proud of that work. So whenever I think of my children and their opportunity to go to school in a district that is focused on equity, that is looking at that work, it has made me even more proud to be a member of this community. And I say that my claim to fame here in Cumberland is that my family has moved here 3 times. So we really have made an active choice about being a part of this district and the community. But I thought I would tell you what equity has meant to me in my practice and with my children. It has meant that we really look carefully at the families and the children that don't feel like they are included in our educational system. And I know that those students and families exist in our school district. I know that they do. I know that they do because I look at public data that talks about how different students feel. If you look at for instance, the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey, you can find information about how different groups of students feel, how they feel safe, how they feel that whether they're included and whether they belong. If you look at our own public data in MSAD 51, you can see how different groups of students are not experiencing the same outcomes that all of our students. And so that to me has been, if a district, an educator is looking at those issues, I think that we can only get better at serving all students. Personally, I also want to just talk and say that I really want my own students to be prepared for the diverse world that they will enter when they leave here. And I want my children to be prepared to think critically about all of the issues and the complicated issues of our time. And I think that we cannot ignore that race is one of the more complicated issues of our day. And if we are not preparing our students to engage in those discussions thoughtfully and critically, I don't think they are really prepared for the world that they are entering in. I just want to thank you for your time tonight. Also, thank you for your service. One of my greatest prides in being an American, and in particularly being a citizen of Maine, is in how we demonstrate our local control and how we express our voice around our public education system. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Eliza Batchelder. I'm from North Yarmouth. And I feel like we're hearing a lot of opinions about critical race theory this evening from people who don't know a lot about what critical race theory is. I find it frustrating that whenever these conversations are happening in our community, the people crying about critical race theory, when asked to point to any specific example, they have nothing. And I'm not a great public speaker, so bear with me. But I applaud the district's equity work. I am pleased with the draft that came out today. Can't wait to see more. I think, you know, if you're feeling like racism isn't a problem in our community, you need to see the fact that whenever the district engages in equity work, a large group of people, not a very large group of people, but a loud group of people show up to try and put a stop to it. I'm dismayed that we heard openly transphobic comments tonight in public comment, and people in the audience applauded. It's a pretty clear sign to me that the equity work is necessary. I'd like to also take this time to thank the outgoing board members and to say to the incoming board members, congratulations, and I hope that you all can live up to the standards of this board. And I would like to say a personal thank you to the board and the school administrators and the faculty and staff this year for giving our kids a safe school year in absolutely unprecedented times. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you for your work.
Thank you.
All right, make sure I get this aimed right. Okay. Good evening. My name is Susan Smith, and I live in North Yarmouth. And I would like to speak tonight regarding the draft policy for non-discrimination, cultural proficiency, equity, and anti-racism. There are some terms in the heading that warrant review. Non-discrimination, we should all operate by this code, and I believe that 99.9% of us do. I have to disagree with the person who spoke just before me. I think most of us, if not all of us, believe that we treat people like we want to be treated. However, if discrimination is happening in our schools, that's appalling, and it should have been addressed immediately. I think that everyone in the community would agree with this. The term equity is used to overcome discrimination against specific groups of people, and again, I ask you, are students in MSAD being discriminated against? I see more examples of discriminating against ideas and beliefs, people not feeling comfortable saying what they feel if it goes against a certain political climate or certain viewpoints in classrooms. Cultural proficiency and anti-racism both have as underlying principles that as a nation, we are a systemically racist country who oppresses certain groups. So by trying to counter this perceived racism, this ideology actually promotes racism. We are creating an environment of separation. We would all do well by living by a guiding principle of one of our country's greatest heroes, Martin Luther King Jr. That principle is to judge people by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. This policy being put forth does not abide by this principle at all. It's the exact opposite. It is saying to judge people by the color of their skin and to feel bad about who they are. This policy has vague statements throughout. That in itself is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. Along the lines of vagueness, how are we to determine what this so-called implicit bias that is mentioned in this policy? Does the Equity Steering Committee, the teacher, the administration get to determine what's in someone's heart? I think not. I believe two of the members on the policy committee who wrote this, on the committee who wrote the policy, are members of the school board who will vote to approve it. That is a conflict of interest. This group did not seem to be inclusive of members. Apparently, people offered and asked to be part of it, and they were denied. This is going to further divide the community, which is inherent in the policy itself. Divide us. We are all Americans. We are citizens of a country that people risk their lives to come to. We should aim to unify as Americans. But yet, with this policy, I fear we are trying to teach our students that we are systemically racist, and one group is an oppressor and another the oppressed. We are forcing a divide on our students by
that's 3 minutes.
Ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, etc. This divide is not inherent. Policies such as this created, our children deserve better. I ask that you do not support this policy. Public involvement and public input in such a policy is imperative. As taxpayers and parents, this is our right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Emily Reynolds of North Yarmouth. I just have to say that some of my fondest childhood memories are of campaigning with my father before his terms as school board president, and I really appreciate the hours and long days and months that you put in. So I'm wondering something. What if some of the teachers within your employ feel uncomfortable about teaching the proposed new draft equity policy regarding gender that pushes everyone to celebrate the choices of a few, which are heralded as popular culture or worldview? Would those teachers be discriminated against or lose their jobs because they wouldn't fit the mold for the new definition of non-discrimination that the board is seeking to create by carefully monitoring new hires that suit their agenda? This proposed policy feels like it may end up discriminating against employees and vested families if they don't choose to celebrate this tidal wave created as new doctrine. I have 6 children in your school, as my husband mentioned. 1 just graduated, 2 still at Greeley High School, 2 still at the middle school, and 1 in the elementary school. When we moved here 6 years ago and our oldest son was 12, he was at his most crucial stage of adolescence. He was emotionally crushed after being torn from his best friend on the other side of the country. I worried that this child and his 5 younger siblings wouldn't find new friends here or be accepted at all because of their religious beliefs. So previous to our move, I had just read an article in a New England paper that stated that Maine's churches were closing faster than they could open, and that Maine was self-purported as one of the least religious states in the nation. This was a little worrisome to me, and I spent a lot of sleepless nights before our move. But upon moving here, we found an amazing reception. From day one, when our children walked into the schools, administrators, teachers, other children came up, hugged them, said, "Hey, Reese, hey, Hazel, hey, Micah." They knew all of our children's names before they even entered the school. How does that happen? We were so impressed. We were just blown off our feet with compassion, with understanding and acceptance. So we've taught our children that the Bible states God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he them. Male and female created he them, from Genesis 1:27. We felt like the minority coming into this area that was purported to not have much faith in God. But on the contrary, we experienced such an outpouring of love. We've appreciated one teacher in specific who was raised as a practicing Jew, who understood our oldest daughter's hesitancy to read a book full of high-level profanity. This teacher honored our daughter's request to opt out of reading one of John Steinbeck's adult novels, which was one of my favorites, but I'm an adult, for another, less verbally harsh title of The Red Pony. And she loved it, and it was a beautiful experience. So we applaud that teacher and the honor and decency that these teachers put in to listening to their students. This is just one of the reasons I feel surprised that the new draft equity policy is taking such extravagant measures to implement a program that may undermine what parents are teaching their own children about their belief systems in their own homes.
Emily, that's 3 minutes.
All right. I'll just close by saying thank you for your continued devotion to our children's education, and I oppose the draft equity policy.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Joshua Justice. We live in North Yarmouth. We have one son. Just graduated 8th grade. I am here tonight to oppose the non-discrimination, cultural proficiency, equity, and anti-racism draft. From everything I've heard, it seems like the majority of people that showed up are also in opposition, so I wish you would take that into account. I just saw it today for the first time about a half an hour before I got here, so I didn't have a whole lot of time to get my comments together. But there's definitely should be, I think, a public discussion if this is what we're going to teach our children, especially about some of this language. And, you know, I've got a lot of questions about things like that I don't think will be answered tonight if I asked them. You probably wouldn't answer them, is my guess. I only get 3 minutes. But I'd like to have them answered, certainly before anything like this would be voted on or possibly put into effect, you know. Can you give concrete examples of structural institutional barriers at Greeley School? You know, why do we need this policy? Can you give, in the definitions, personal characteristics, right? You're allowed to have all these personal characteristics, real or perceived, as long as these characteristics are not dehumanizing to another person. So can you give me an example of a characteristic that dehumanizes other people? Do we have students in our school that have personal characteristics that are dehumanizing the other students? I'd like to get some concrete examples of what those are. Cultural proficiency is required. I don't believe that. I work in a multinational group from people from all over the world, many countries. I'm not proficient in their cultures. They're not proficient in mine, but we work very well together. So it's definitely we should do our best to learn about our own culture and those of others, but it's the idea that you have to be proficient in every culture to be successful, I think is ridiculous. Okay, let's see here. Ongoing examination, self-reflection to challenge one's own cultural bias. So who gets to decide the culture of the children? Are the teachers deciding the culture that each child fits into and then telling those children what their cultural biases are? Who gets to decide what a culture's biases are? Is it someone from that cultural group that makes that decision? Is it someone from a different cultural group that makes that decision? You know, who is deciding these things? And then ultimately, what happens when these cultures conflict? Because the truth is, not every culture is inclusive of every other culture in the world, right? There are ideas in different cultures that conflict each other. Who gets to decide which culture is right and which culture is wrong? And how does this affect the actual curriculum? You know, like, can you give concrete examples of how this is going to be taught? How this is going to actually affect the students? You know, is this going to be taught in every course? In math class and science class, or is there going to be a special course that teaches just this? Is it elective? Is it mandatory? You know, there's a lot of questions that I have here, and I think I'll stop there. But the last thing I'll say is, you know, it looks to me like this is going to create some discrimination and create some racism. I think other people have mentioned that. And you know, one thing I heard a while back that was interesting
Your 3 minutes is up, so.
Thank you. Yeah, the last thing I'll say is you can't end discrimination by discriminating against a different group of people, and you can't end racism by being racist against a different group of people. It's not going to work.
Thank you.
My name is Ellie Anderton, and we live here in Cumberland, and I'm the mother of 2 kids in the school district, and I just wanted to say that I oppose the draft equity policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Michelle Chinkat. I have 3 children in the school system. I am here tonight to oppose the draft equity policy. My husband wanted to be here and speak against this draft as well, but he is home with our children. I want to start by saying that I love everyone. And I teach my children to as well. Teaching love and acceptance should not be complicating. It's just basic human decency. This policy is making things very complicated in our community and has caused division, and I believe will continue to cause more division if implemented. I want to see unity in our community. As a Christian who is commanded by God to love everyone, I believe we are all equal because we are all children of God. This is true regardless of our ethnicity, gender, or anything else this world wants to create. I welcome this commandment into my heart and soul, and also into the upraising of my children. I do not believe this policy creates love towards everyone. What this policy does is swaps one wrong for another wrong. It swaps racism and suppression for racism and suppression. The only difference is the target. This is not equity and inclusion, it's division and exclusion. Please, let's work together to create true unity, true inclusion, and true equity. Drop this draft and let's start over. We all want what is best for all of the children in this community. We can do this the right way. This is not it. Let's please create unity in our community. Thank you.
Nick Began, Cumberland. First, I'd like to say thank you for removing the mask mandate starting the fall. I think it put a lot of people at ease for the next school year, so I appreciate and commend the action taken on that. Second, and it was brought up last meeting by one of the council members, and I brought it up at the town council meeting, and I'm hopeful, and Jeff, I've emailed you on this as well, but if we could go back to the regular meeting cadence starting next year, I think that'd be a great thing. There's too much overlap right now. There's a town council meeting happening tonight, and I think most people, or at least myself, would like to attend both meetings. So again, I'd like to put that request out there to go back to the previously agreed dates that you guys have with the town council. Lastly, on the equity work, I actually was able to get into the meeting. Maybe it's by name, I don't know, but they let me in, and I learned a lot. I just listened, and one thing that struck me was that, Ann, you had mentioned the framework for this policy was taken from Montgomery County, Maryland, and in part Gorham as well, Gorham School Systems. And I briefly went on the Montgomery website and just did some quick research. It's a very different community than obviously what we have up here in Maine. But one thing I noticed that struck me, and I think it would serve us quite well if we mirrored this, is the amount of community outreach that they did before putting anything out. And I understand this was a draft policy and there's still work to be done. And I understand that you are considering doing surveys, but I think it's more than surveys. Forget this. This setup does not work. Get around a table and have discussions. Get off Facebook. Get it in a room so we can have discussions face to face. That's the only way this is going to work. Otherwise, this will tear the community apart. And this is a small representation of what is to come if we continue down this path. So I plead to you to reconsider this approach. I think, to me, it doesn't start with the children. It starts with the parents in this community. Look at what's happened the last year. I think you have people in the community that were willing to take a different approach, but you need to be willing to listen. And I'll end with this, and Eliza and Ann, you both lead a group in the community, which it's an anti-racist group for Cumberland and North Yarmouth. And I've requested to be part of this group, as well as I think many others have. Granted, my request was this morning, and I think others it's been several weeks.
Nick, that's 3 minutes.
We have not been allowed to join this group, so if you're all about equity and inclusion, I request my request to be approved, Eliza and Ann. Thank you.
Nick has complained about this to a lot of people before he even applied to be in the anti-racism group. I don't know how we turned you down before you even applied. But you didn't, yeah. But I've heard that you complained before today that you were turned away. And people that were turned away without any further communication, it's because you didn't answer the membership questions.
Okay.
You did not.
I'd like to not have public comment about a Facebook group. I
I would be happy to have a discussion another time, but you did not answer the questions, and I do not appreciate lies being spread about me.
Okay, thank you, Eliza. Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak this evening?
We're going to take a real big breath after all that, folks. Good evening. Hannah Berry, Cumberland. I had all sorts of swirling ideas of things I wanted to share, and now it just feels heavy in the room. So the election was last week. Congratulations to Anne and Jason and Tom. I think it was referenced that the community is definitely divided. And if I haven't seen a tight race result like that, I mean, it was very clear that many people supported many different candidates. And however you look at it, moderates, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that we're a community and we are all one, and we all want to be included. I think a lot of people brought up some really great points about just opening up the discussion, that might help people moving forward. I think it's great that the community is going to get back to school, yay, back to 5, and love the masks, because I know my kids are really, really wearing thin on some of those. So I think that's going to be really great for the kids' mental health. I think in conclusion, I would say that I live in this community primarily because I was born and raised here, and I just love the great state of Maine for all of its outdoor wilderness. I spent a weekend at the lake, and that was just what we all needed. But I think we need to have a policy that people feel good about, and I don't think people are feeling really good about this policy, and it's not about discrimination. I don't feel good about the policy, and I have 3 African-American cousins, and I was raised by a lesbian. So it's not because I discriminate. I just don't like how it makes the community feel. And I think everyone wants to feel like we're all together in this, and that we care about educating our kids, educating them on math and science and engineering and reading and writing and poetry, and reducing the homework load just a little bit and way less screen time on those laptops. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak this evening?
Chair McGinley, I'm wondering if we could move the policy report up,
Yes, I was
just
going
to
to ask.
be more responsive.
Yes, thank you, read my mind. So Anna's going to give an update because it's pretty pertinent to what everyone just spoke on. So Go ahead, Ann.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. And we do understand that there was a technical problem with the live stream, so we will be sharing that link. There was a lot of really great discussion that happened in the policy group. First, before I discuss anything about the policy, I do want to share the process that we follow for adopting and revising policies. So a policy first begins with a subcommittee of stakeholders, and in this case, it's the Equity Leadership Steering Committee, which is made up of students, teachers, administrators, board members, and parents. The Equity Leadership Steering Committee worked on this policy for 2 months of review and finalization before being passed to the policy committee. Now that it is in the policy committee, it is our job as policy to review and ask any questions. It is then our duty to have it reviewed by Drummond and Woodson for their approval, nothing that we even bring to the board. It can't be brought to the board without Drummond and Woodson giving us a sign off. Any questions that we have, and I'll be informing you of our conversation, then it will go back to the equity committee. And it could do that a couple of times. It's not coming to the board now for discussion this evening. Once it is brought to the board, though, we'll have it on the agenda as a first read. And public comment, that will be another space available for public comment. Then it would come to the board for a second read, and it would be on that second read that the board would vote on the policy. And we would need a majority vote. We're not trying to push this policy through, as some people are feeling. I had shared in policy that adopting an equity policy was one of our board goals for this academic year. And so we have brought that to policy committee. So I don't know if just because it's late in the year that's maybe one reason why people are feeling a little more unsure about the timing of it all. A couple of things that we talked about in policy were also ways that we can have more public input. And quite frankly, prior to it coming to policy, it wouldn't be appropriate because we need to allow our committees to do the work that they're tasked to do. So now that it's been brought to policy, we're exploring other ways that we can facilitate that conversation, including that the policy needs to go to the district leadership team so that they can review it. The policy, hopefully we would like to craft an anonymous Google survey so that people can provide very specific comments about what their concerns are with the policy without any fear of being retaliated against. And we are also then, once we have gathered that information and got the information back from Drummond and Woodsum, the equity committee would look at it again, and we would like to set up some sort of public forum so that we can have more discussion. These are things that we are considering, and I've been thinking about it a lot, and I just want to make that clear that we want to hear what people are thinking. Moving specifically to policy ACA, as Nick mentioned in his public comment, the language was primarily taken from an adopted policy from Montgomery County Schools in the state of Maryland. We also took it from Gorham. Some language was written by the Equity Leadership Steering Committee. And then some of it was actually from our own policy, JB, Transgender Student Guidelines, which was adopted in October of 2017. The definitions for gender were taken from there. The other thing that I wanted to touch on is the idea that this policy is teaching critical race theory. And I will say, as someone who is very passionate about equity and anti-racism, that there's a lot about critical race theory that I don't know myself. What I do know is that it was developed by a group of Black legal scholars in the late 1970s. It analyzes how our laws can inadvertently reproduce racial inequality, and it considers the fact that many of our national systems, including our legal system, were developed when people of color did not have full participation in our society. It might be more accurate for people to be referring to this as following critical race studies, because that does expand critical race theory outside of the legal field. But ultimately, the goal of this policy is to ensure that we're teaching an accurate, dynamic history, and that we consider the differing experiences people can have the exact same event. And I think in a lot of ways this discussion is the perfect example, because we have people who hear it one way and people who hear it another way. And so that's why we're here to have these dialogues. One example regarding the policy, which I know another member had asked for sort of some concrete examples, is that as a district, we can't adequately address our country's history of enslavement of Africans in a single chapter or short time-limited lesson plan as it has generally been presented throughout the country. Cumberland, North Yarmouth is not alone. And just because chattel slavery has been made illegal, it doesn't mean that we're not still dealing with the aftermath of its effects. This policy would be making sure that we are having the history that we are currently presenting in the classrooms now, and just making sure that we're including other things, such as the Tulsa Race Massacre, the Native American boarding schools, Trail of Tears, Japanese internment, medical experimentation on Black people, just to name a few. Teaching these violent events is not meant to discriminate against white people for engaging in any of these behaviors in the past. It's not meant to cause our students to hate our country or to hate the fact that they were born with white skin. On the contrary, it's to have a better understanding of how we've gotten to this point today in time, so that we can prevent any future violence or harm from happening. We want our students to be lifelong learners. We want them to be prepared for a global society. And that's the goal of this policy, and I look forward to all of the next steps that come after this.
Thank you, Anne. That was super helpful. Thank you so much. Okay, we are going.
Sorry, I will ask. I guess I don't know if board members have
Anyone
any
else is
questions
welcome
or.
to say something if they'd like.
Well, the only thing I'll say is that following up on a couple of the remarks made tonight, that before this comes to a board vote, I do want to see some very extensive dialogue going on in this community, both face-to-face and not just emails going out, but I think as a couple have said, some face-to-face stuff, and we can't do this in the summer when everybody's off to Sebago Lake or something. This is too critical to the community, and people that are smarter than I am, we need to devise some ways to have this discussion so that it's both ways, and we delve down to it a little bit so it isn't just sound bites on Fox News or MSNBC or whatever the thing is. But we just need to fully vet this with the community before we do anything, because when I first saw the thing, I thought, I didn't saw the agenda that we're going to voting on this, and I said, the first thing I would have done off the bat was to table the thing. But I just think we just need to, I just think we need to discuss this and engage the community more, because I just feel a little uncomfortable at this point until it happens. And, I'm speaking with somebody who has, biracial grandchildren and such. So this, has meaning in my family, but I also want I just don't want to see the community torn apart as much. And I think we need to have, a calm discussion, and again, not people going wild on the side of the road or on national media or anything else, but to try to keep it in the community and kind of do the best we can.
Tyler, could I think it's really important, and I appreciate everyone coming tonight and the respectful dialogue that I know that our community is capable of having over difficult issues like this. Like, we will get there, and I know that this board will listen. I just want to make it really clear, and Anne, thank you for your thoughtfulness, but this policy has followed the exact same direction and course that any other policy in this district has. It has had no special treatment. It has had nothing specific or extraordinary about it. It's following the exact same trajectory. And normally, this policy, we receive public input or comment when the policy comes to a first read. So I'm not sure who kind of alerted that this was happening tonight, but that was false information. And it's, we're happy to have as much dialogue as we want, but there's a perception that this policy was being voted on or there was some action tonight, and that could not be farther from the truth. We are still in the early stages, and I see a huge commitment from Ann Maximovich on a community dialogue around this policy. So, and I will participate in that as a parent.
Thank you, Kate.
Kevin?
Thank you, Tyler. To echo that, Kate, because I was making the same note, so many of the different policies that come in front of us, we don't talk about them because they're always comfortable. But some of those policies, I just report you in the hallway. When we had conversations about things like that in the past, was that group coming together because the shared perspective that you cannot get as an individual board member on something, weighing in from parents, children, teachers, administration, the chief, other folks coming in and collaborating. So I'm inclined to agree with the gentleman who said we need to be in the same room together for conversations. This isn't going to be an easy discussion, but so just like other policies, getting folks to weigh in to the degree possible, sharing experiences, and then ensuring that whatever happens with this policy, it's uniquely this community. It meets the needs of this community. And that does come about from conversations. Now, the best thing about today is that a number of folks with different perspectives came into the room, and I didn't even hear anybody get called a name, so that's refreshing. We can do better because sitting around the table with opposing views is something that is absolutely necessary in this community, and it's kind of damn exciting. I mean, exciting. So, thank you.
I just wanted to add that with policy development in this district or any district, there's different ways that policies are brought forward. And so most policies actually are very benign, and they go to a first read or a review at the policy committee, and might just be in the policy committee for one meeting or maybe 2 meetings, and then they go to the board. And they just need an adjustment. There's other policies that we've had here that have taken literally 1.5 to 2 years before they ever make it. I'm not suggesting policies should take that long, but we have had instances where policies have taken a very long time before it gets to the board because it has gone back and forth between groups, or we've gotten more information, or our legal counsel has weighed in multiple times and said, you need to worry about this or don't worry about that. So I think at the policy committee, unfortunately, the link didn't work, and we are going to try to retrieve that link so people that were interested in hearing from that meeting will get the information. But at the policy committee, we did talk a lot about multiple steps that can be taken to broaden participation, not at a board meeting necessarily, although this is a good forum as well, but other forums that we can get people that are comfortable giving their thoughts and opinions about this policy and how we can to move this policy to the board with input. So we know this is a policy that obviously is going to require those steps that other policies that we've had will need to do. So policies take different steps in order to get to the full board for a vote, and I assume that this will be one of them. So.
Thank you, everybody. I would just want to...
Tyler, can I just...
Oh, yes. Yeah, sorry.
I just would like to say that, as Mike's over here looking at his watch, making it click. Just kidding. That there were quite a few people on the board that have not seen this draft. And when it got circulated by someone that was going to attend the meeting, I think it was not the right place to alert people. It's nice that people were alerted and came and we have those discussions, but there's several of us sitting around here that had never even seen that policy. So I think that we need to engage along the process and to have all of our voices heard, and to sit down, as many people have said before me, sit down and have those conversations. As we've seen over the last year, it's really divided our community, and we have to take the right steps with this. but to understand that that policy isn't coming from, it isn't to the point to be voted on. It needs a lot of work, so.
Thank you. Mike, did you have something as well?
Yeah, I do. You can check your watch, too.
Yeah.
I don't want to belabor everything, but I do want to echo that the tone of everybody's comments is really, I really deeply appreciate it. There were things that people said that I deeply disagree with, but they were done so with respect, and I deeply appreciate that, and I share in that respect. So hopefully you feel that. I'm only been on here for a year, the board, but, and Kate, you mentioned it's going through a process. To me, it seems like it's going actually slower than others, and it should. It really should. This is an important one. It's not changing a few words, and I do really appreciate you running through that process and running this process. I did want to just say two quick things. One, I do think to echo a comment that was made previously from a member of the public that, you know, and to quasi somewhat agree with what you mentioned, Kevin, that it's incredibly important that we have a policy that fits our community, but we have to remember that we're preparing our children to be citizens of a broader ecosystem. Whether, you know, we can't expect that our kids will always be here. I hope my kids always stay right next to me, but they won't. And so it's incredibly important that we give them that breadth of knowledge, of education and such. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that, you know, these things are not just, you know, teaching about the massacre in Tulsa. It's about Malaga Island in Maine, which was a community that was multiracial that the state of Maine in 1911 decided to eradicate. It was the fact that we had names of islands in Maine up until last year that had deeply racist names. And it wasn't until last year that we finally changed that. So, you know, it's here. It's everywhere. And so, but the thing is, to this point, we can do this respectfully, and we can do it with a long, concerted dialogue. Peter, I think you set the tone really well, too, with because I sincerely agree that this should be done face-to-face. I'd love to help with that. I think we can do a good job at doing that. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Madison?
So I was among the people that was kind of confused about what the policy thing was, and I ended up frantically searching through my email, Googling, going through the district webpage just to find what we were talking about because it sounded very interesting. But I did want to give my student input with some of the notes that I kind of jotted down in between my frantic searching. Something that kind of hurt me as a student in the community from the public comment was the fact that there were the applauds. I think another community member mentioned it. The applaud at transphobia hurt me as an ally to the LGBTQ community and as someone that has questioned sexuality themselves. That felt incredibly disrespectful, that the sexuality of a student could determine whether or not they feel welcome in a sport that they might prize over everything else in their life. We've all heard of Olympic swimmers. We know that they love swimming. And to think that you couldn't go into your sport just because of the way that you identify as yourself kind of hurt personally, even if that's not how I identify. I don't agree with some of the things that were said about the school. I don't think that sexuality or belief should be forced upon students, but sexuality is not a belief. It is something that you are. It is not something that should be pushed onto people. I don't think that anyone should be told you should be gay or you're not going to be popular or to be or unfriended because of sexuality. I think that's disturbing. I don't think that that should be taught in our schools. But I think that belief should also be respected in the sense that we shouldn't disregard Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, anything because it doesn't value a sexuality or anything like that. I think that it was hard to hear that some people don't think that there's homophobia in the school. There is. The second person I ever told that I was questioning called me a slur and never spoke to me again just because I was questioning my sexuality. And it was a member of the school community. It was a student in this school. And that to me was just the first time I'd ever really noticed, wow, I've never noticed this before, but this person is really homophobic. And I understand that there are members of the community that might not agree with the LGBTQ plus community, which is completely fine to have your own beliefs against sexuality. But to enforce that upon other people's kids who you do not understand their lives, their sexuality, and things like that really hurt me as a student who learns here. I think that sexuality, again, should not be imposed. I will never hear from a teacher, and I should never hear from a teacher, you should be a certain sexuality. But to think that parents were upset about learning about equality amongst sexuality and racism was disheartening to hear as a student of the community. With racism, I obviously cannot talk about personal experiences. I'm white. I've never been put at a disadvantage because of my race, but I've also heard, not firsthand if it's not being said to me, but I've heard racist comments. We've had multiple assemblies over a singular racist issue because it damaged so many people. Racism and homophobia do exist within our schools, and though I don't agree with certain ideas I think that are being pushed onto students, I think that it's important that it gets addressed and that equity is actually spread throughout the community, because just because you as a parent might not see it does not mean it doesn't happen. You don't roam the schools or the halls in the school, and it can be scary for that exact reason, and that's why it's important to have things like policy and equity committees.
Thank you, Madison.
Thank you, Madison.
I'd like to say that I think we've already started a really good conversation, and although this is not the forum that we would all prefer, I think the conversation has begun. I want to thank everybody for their respectful comments. That's something that we hope to continue throughout this year. As everybody has said, we do plan on setting up some more public discussion, but I think the most important thing is that you let the process take place so that when we do have those discussions, we're actually talking about a policy that's been vetted through the process. Because right now we're talking about a policy that hasn't even made it through the policy first meeting. And so I would hate to spend time talking about something that's going to be edited and gone through legal review and things like that when it's not even finalized to really present to the public. So please just respect that we do have a process that keeps all of this consistent. And I look forward to when we get to have this conversation again. So thank you, everybody, for coming tonight.
Madam Chair, can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
I think it would be helpful for the board if we could understand where this information was shared with all of you folks. I appreciate you showing up, but yeah, was it Mr. Record sharing it, or?
Mike?
Yeah.
I have, believe it was on June 3rd, called Tyler. I'd been corresponding back and forth with Tyler. I got the information originally from Nick. Like I said in my speech, I have worked very hard to be part of the equity committee. I have called Nick monthly. I think Jeff can attest to it, as well as Tyler and Ann, that I've been very active and involved in trying to understand what you guys are working on. And putting
so
my.
It was you who shared this with the group, correct?
I got it from Fran Prentice. She sent me the draft.
I just wanted to see how this cart got so far out.
I just like to add, I think it's a wonderful thing that we all have it, and we can see where you guys are progressing with this. I mean, this is the dialogue that we want to be having right now. Yes, I understand there's going to be various steps along the way, but
I'm just not sure that sharing it on Facebook maybe is the
I'm not on Facebook. I don't have a Facebook membership.
I would just hope that the community could just take different approaches with that.
Well, I'm surprised to hear the board didn't have it. It was handed to me from
Because it's a public document, but it hadn't gone through the full process where we normally would be ready with a final draft for feedback. So, I mean, if it lives on our computers, we have to share it.
I was not aware that you guys hadn't seen it.
You haven't done anything wrong. Like, I'm not trying to imply that. I'm just trying to think of how all of this happened this evening.
What happened that was so...
Will you come up to the mic, Mr. Record?
No, thank you.
I actually can clarify, if it would be helpful, I can just clarify what happened. Normally, all of our policies that go to policy committee don't go to the full board prior to it going to the policy committee, because these are just drafts and it's a working committee, so the working committee is working on the policy, and we don't share it with the full board. However, because there was interest in the policy and there was a request for the policy, and it is a public document, we did provide it upon request.
Sure.
And because we don't typically provide it to the full board until they get it, you know, to vote on or to look at it as a first read. That's where the complication came in this time.
Okay.
Usually we don't have those,
Yeah, sure.
you know,
I
things
guess
that
I would
happen.
just like to add that, you know, I think the message here is that we, as part of the community, want to be more involved in the process, and many of us have tried, and our voices have not been heard. And thankfully, the policy was sent to me. I didn't know I wasn't allowed to share it with my friends and
No, I don't
discuss
think
it.
no one said that. We were just trying to
Yeah.
figure out how this process happened so out of order. But I think we all really appreciate the dialogue that happened here tonight.
I
And
do
don't want
too.
to taint that at all. I was just trying to trace this back to how this happened.
Great, thank you.
It's
You've done
something-
nothing wrong.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's something
Thank
too
you.
that I should have, you know, since I knew that it was being requested, I should have then immediately shared it with the board so that no one felt blindsided or unprepared. And naively, I didn't expect this. So, you know, I'll keep working to do my best to be transparent, and my apologies to my fellow board members who
None
hadn't
needed.
seen it.
This is a good thing. I don't think there's anything bad that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would suggest, and this is another step for us, but I'd be happy to do this if this helps the board, is that anytime a draft policy is going before the board, we can certainly copy the full board and not just the policy committee, if that is helpful,
Yes.
so that the board is aware of any policies that are going before the policy committee. If that's something that you would like, we can make that a procedure going forward. We've not done that at all before, but if that's something that would be helpful to the board, we'd certainly be happy to do that.
I think it would be, just seeing this process.
Okay.
Well, and look, it's, I got to tell you, and Kate, you can echo this if you want or disagree. Sharing policy is the hardest damn thing on this board.
Yep.
It really is, because there's a really good chance nobody's happy at any time. So I like transparency. I love the fact that Ms. Ford is on the cutting edge in the community. I think that was, I think it's a good outcome for people to have information. I think that there's opportunities to continue that type of dissemination of information in the future, even on the innocuous policies.
Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. So we will move on to communications, which first item is the board calendar for 21 and 22. So that was in our packet. It doesn't require a vote, but it is important that our board is aware of these dates, as we have a lot of important meetings coming up through the summer. I know there was discussion about this space as our meeting space, and it's been brought up to myself and I believe Jeff multiple times. It is something that we are looking into, but it isn't something that we made a decision on quite yet. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or concerns about the calendar that was in. Go ahead, Peter.
I think to follow up on something was said earlier, are we synced with the council, so we are not on those nights for the most part?
I believe we are. We might be out of sync 1 or 2 meetings during the year, which typically in a typical year, we always have been. For whatever reason, there's a vacation or something that throws us off. But this calendar should be far more in sync and more typical of other years. And I did talk to Bill Shane about it as well, because he had raised the concern. And I agree, we just had a lot of interesting things happen this year that we needed to take care of. And so it did throw our schedule off. But I believe the schedule, when we looked at it, and if you see anything that's different, for the most part, follows, our more typical meeting schedule.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions about the calendar? Go ahead, Mike.
Can I ask, this is not related to that, though I appreciate that you checked with Bill. I do think we should make every effort to not ever overlap. About Wednesdays, we had talked in a previous meeting, and Tyler, I just wanted to ask, you had said you were going to check in on potential grant program, and I'm just interested if you ever heard back or if you had a chance.
Oh, on the REV program, yes. I met with Daniel Westhoven, who is the Pathways Coordinator here at the high school, and we talked about some different ideas about how we could expand on that program, as it's had a lot of traction over the past year. I think there were 21 students that received credit this past year on the program that he has created called Silo. And so we collected some ideas and then sent them off to Martin at the DOE, and I have yet to hear back, but that was just last week. So I'm working on it.
That's awesome. I really appreciate it. I've been giving just a little bit of thought to Wednesdays. I know I came on after the 18-month committee that dealt with this, and I've learned a bit more about it. And I do think we should spend some time going forward. I don't think I feel like the discussion after just the bit I've learned, and there's quite a bit more that I do need to learn, but the discussion, it feels to me like it really dove in and dealt with the notion of need for professional development time. I don't think we should reopen that discussion. But there's another half of this discussion is about care for children and ensuring that our children need to be cared for and on campus. And I think we as a district should help make sure that's the case for a full day, 5 days a week. And I think it's something we as a board should take up. And I don't think we should reopen the discussion on professional development, but we should look into other creative ways to ensure that we're providing support and care for all kids who need it in the district for Wednesday. So I just want to put that out there if we're talking about calendar. If anybody else would like to talk about that, I'd be happy to engage in that discussion, but I do think it's important.
Yeah, I agree. I did reach out to, I think in one of the meetings recently, I had mentioned that looking for next year, knowing that we have approved the calendar for next year and that it will be set as a half day, but working with our community rec programs to see if we could offer some other options. Maybe we could work with staff that's here, that's available at techs. I think we had talked about. I have yet to hear a response back, so I will continue with that as well. But that doesn't mean that we can't make some good efforts for the fall.
And please call on me to help. I'd be happy to help reach out, do some
I will
outreach, too.
delegate. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say I did bring it up with the leadership team, the district leadership team, as an initial discussion, just to see if there was anything on our end that we could do to assist so that more children could be enrolled in the rec program. In talking with the rec department, that's always been a barrier, is that they don't have enough staff that kind of limits their participation. So we did have an initial discussion about that.
That's great, Jeff. I really appreciate that. And I think it's something we should consider as we go into the next budgeting process. Maybe there's a line item that we need to put in there to help support that, to get more staff on with the rec program, to have a line item to support other creative programs on campus or off campus, partnerships with groups in the community, Skyline Farm or something like that. I'm just throwing names out. I think there's more we can do. And so I appreciate that you've already started these discussions and would love to be involved.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so no other comments on the board calendar going forward?
I just mentioned if there is a conflict, we realize that over the summer, especially the summer meetings, there might be a conflict with a summer meeting or event. We do have, a couple of things on the calendar, such as a joint meeting. These are all tentative dates right now. I'm still working with the towns around some of these dates, but I think for now it's safe to say these are hopefully will be the dates, but if there's like a glaring concern about one of these dates, if you could just let either Tyler or myself know so that we can, decide if we need to adjust or not. But the only other thing I would mention is that we took out one of the October meetings because we have 2 public informational meetings that we hope that the board will be participating in around the school project, in trying to get more information and energy and getting people interested in that topic and getting more information about the topic itself. We really want to push that out there and invite people into these meetings. So we thought it was so important that we removed a board meeting in order to put 2 of those informational meetings, and I would see those being face-to-face informational meetings that we would host in 2 different locations. So just want to throw that out.
Great, thank you. I agree those are a priority, especially for this fall. Okay, and then moving on to, we have added a remote meeting for next Monday night at 6:30. And Scott or Kevin, Jeff, do you want to talk about what this meeting is for, specifically budgetary?
I think Scott should talk.
Is this for the 21st?
This is for the 21st, yep?
Yeah, the meeting on the 21st. We have a couple of things that we need, I'm sorry, can everybody hear me okay? Bring this closer, okay. There's a couple of things that we need to do. We have, basically need to have an executive session to discuss the tentative agreement with the Teachers Association and the other, or the Education Association. And then the other thing we need to do is there's another piece of business which will be to vote on the assessments to the two communities, and that's a new process this year from what we've had in the past. It's been recommended and updated. So those are the two components that I have for that meeting.
There's also one other budget transfers.
Oh yeah, sorry, the budget transfers too. Sorry about that. Each year, the last meeting of the year, we do the budget transfers. We're afforded under state statute to transfer 5% of any cost center to another cost center. And there's a number of things that we've done to strategize to place ourselves in a prudent financial position going forward to, you know, be able to move some funds around in the district to be able to accommodate those. One is if everybody remembers, the financials around the modular units, some other things that position us around capital, and, you know, some paying off of leases, et cetera.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, moving on to presentations. We have none for this evening, and there is no superintendent's report, correct?
The only thing I'll mention on the superintendent's report is that at our last meeting last Monday, I'd mentioned that we had 10 finalists for the Employee of the Year, and we ended up with 5 staff members. They are all our school nurses who are celebrated and recognized at our staff celebration last week, all staff celebrations. So I'd like to say thank you to all of our school nurses for doing a wonderful job, and they've actually been on social media. We put that out. Recognizing them. They are getting a gift this week from the district as well for their hard work. We had, 50 nominations. Everybody's so well deserving. We had to narrow it down to a group, and that was the group that has spent many weekends, vacations, holidays, even Christmas Eve, contact tracing students. So we figured they were very worthy of recognition, and certainly thank you to all of our nurses for good work. Tomorrow is the last day of school for Cohort B, which is the last day of school period for the year, to close out the school year, and happy to report that we're able to start the school year off at this point without distancing requirements or masks, and a letter went out this afternoon just giving an update to everyone about that. So there's a lot more details in the plan itself, which has been red inked to show people the changes since the plan went out last week.
Well, those are two pretty important updates. Most deserved recognition to the school nurses, and exciting updates for our fall start of the year. All right, moving on to committee reports. Kevin, Finance?
Sure, thank you. So I just want to express the deep appreciation for the community for passing the budget and each of the articles. And of course, we always look back. It was a very solid margin. We always look at that and want a stronger margin. So we'll continue to do the right things and try to explain where the money is going in subsequent years. I do want to thank the committee, Jennifer, Tyler, Scott, and Jeff, for the tireless work that you did in those multiple hours that we spend many mornings a month, as well as the rest of the board for your advocacy in the community. Thank you so much for making the successful budget year.
Thank you, Kevin. Policy, I think we've covered. Okay. Peter, facilities.
We're continuing to do fine-tuning work. Oak Hill wanted to have another session with the staff at Wilson so that we made sure that we got the building configurations down to a better place. And also we want to have a meeting with Bill Shane and the town planning staff to just go over some of the preliminary things to make sure that we've checked a couple of the boxes with traffic and drainage and buffering and other things that the planning people will have to deal with. And also, on a parallel basis, they're continuing to fine-tune the numbers. And also, Scott has developed a plan going forward for finance method, and I understand the Finance Committee has gone over that. So I am hopeful with the first July meeting that we'll be able to run this thing out, and we'll have numbers to go with it so that we can finally get that out. But I don't believe in doing it on a half-baked basis. When we get the thing out there, it will have been tweaked, and also will give the new board members a chance to weigh in on it.
Thank you, Peter. Nothing for curriculum. Student reports. Madison?
I don't think that I have anything too specific in my notes that I didn't really get to, but I mean, everyone's just very excited for the last days of school. I mean, my last day was, I guess, Tuesday. I haven't had a class since Tuesday, but it's been nice. I think that it was a really rough year, and it rounded off kind of nicely, though.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, we'll move into items for action. Kevin, do you want to handle that first one?
I can. So, excuse me, I'm going to read this out. I make a motion that we certify election results of June 14th, 2021 budget validation referendum, that the computation and declaration of votes dated June 14th, 2021 and attached hereto be approved, that the computation and declaration of votes be entered upon the records of Maine School Administrative District Number 51, that a certified copy of the computation and the declaration of votes be sent to each of the municipal clerks within the district, and that the foregoing computation and declaration shall be signed by a majority of the school board, and that these signatures may be made electronically by execution of counterparts and in person at the convenience of the members of the school board.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? You can you approach the podium? We can't hear you.
Did you say June 14th twice?
Yes.
Is it supposed to be the June 8th election or no?
It's the June 8th election, but the computation of votes is dated June 14th, which is the board meeting tonight.
All right.
And the certification date is today as well.
That's correct.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also need, before everybody leaves this evening, I do have the computation that I need everybody to sign this evening before you leave.
So before you leave, please make sure you sign with Scott. All right, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. And thank you, Kevin. All right, and then we'll move on to vote to approve the strategic priorities for 2021 and 2022 as presented at our last meeting on June 7th. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor? Thank you. And then next we have a vote to extend the current strategic plan until June 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Tyler.
Margot
Oh,
and
Margo,
Mike.
go ahead. Sorry.
I saw Margot's hand first.
I just blurted it out.
I just wanted to speak to why I believe that this should be extended for 2 years. When I was reading through to remind myself what this all was, I think that the priorities for next year are clear. But looking at the strategic plan as a whole, I know there's a lot that's near and dear to my heart that is articulated in the plan as a whole. So I do hope that we'll hold on to that good, solid information and direction for 2 years. So,
thank you, Margot. Mike?
Yeah, just really quick, I agree completely, Margot, just noting that next year we can easily go in and make changes if we so choose.
That's right. The board can make changes to the strategic plan through a vote. Yep.
The only thing that I wanted to, oh, sorry, are you done?
Oh, I am done.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also appreciate that it's being extended until 2023 because, you know, really, I think next year we need to focus on trauma recovery. While there's so many wonderful things in our strategic plan that our district also needs, we need to recover from COVID.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, any further discussion? All right, all in favor? Thank you. And then moving on to a motion for approving hiring professional positions, grade 4, grade 6, grade 7, and 8 math and science.
I move that we vote to approve the appointment of professional positions as outlined by the superintendent.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to say, whenever a staff appointment comes up, I always look at the cover letter and look at the information. I've said it before that we keep attracting the highest quality, but what I've seen from this batch of hires is that we have specifically found really impeccable educators from these one-year long-term substitutes. One of these teachers, Mr. McGinty, has been an absolute bright spot for my 6th graders. Very difficult COVID year, and again, we are attracting the best teaching staff, and I think our long-term substitute strategy has really paid off, and I can see it in these appointments.
Thank you, Kate. Kevin?
I think that's beautifully said, Kate. The backgrounds are fantastic. Jeff, is there anything that you can inform the community about these roles again?
Yeah, these 3 positions that are before the board tonight, which are grade 4, grade 6, and grade 7, 8 math and science, are all one-year positions. So these teachers will receive a one-year contract. And these are 3 of the 10 positions that we have in the budget or in federal funds to help with reducing class size. So originally it was for distancing purposes, and now that we don't have that, as you approve the plan, as the board approved the plan, if the distancing was removed, it was for making sure that we have smaller class sizes next year. That was the second purpose of having these 10 additional teachers. So I'm pleased that the plan was approved that way. And Kate, I agree with you completely. We were a little concerned because these are one-year positions. Will we find good candidates? We generally hire in this district teachers that have probably between 3 and 8 years of experience, somewhere in that range. That's our average. And these teachers have less than that experience, but we have had them working in our schools and have experience, and our administrators have been able to be in their rooms and watch them teach. It's wonderful to have these great, very talented people in our classrooms next year. I'm very, very happy about that. I do all the final interviews, and I'm always really in awe of what the administrators bring me at the end of the day, so it's great.
Thank you. All right, all in favor? Thank you. All right, and next is the election of school board officers for the 2021-2022 school year, and I'm going to pass this off to Margot.
Thank you, Tyler. As dictated by policy BDE-1, which states, in order to ensure board members have the opportunity to participate in leadership roles, the chairperson shall ask a board member to contact each board member prior to June 1st to solicit names of all individuals to be considered for chair and vice chair. The vote for chair and vice chair will be held at the last board meeting in June, and this policy was adopted June 2002 and revised in May 2017. As one of the outgoing board members, I volunteered to contact current members to solicit nominations and/or gauge members' interest in a leadership role on the board. Clearly, this past year, the district and its board were faced with a number of unforeseen challenges. Taking the time to reflect over the year and thoughtfully consider who to put forth as our nominations for leadership resulted in many fruitful conversations among board members. I'd like to thank you each for your time. As a board, we came to the consensus that the nomination of our current chair and vice chair for a second term will provide the district the consistency, stability, and effectiveness of a known leadership team. Therefore, I move to nominate Tyler McGinley as chair and Kevin Desmond as vice chair for the 2021-2022 school year term.
Thank you, Margot. In a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion?
Well, I'll just weigh in. Having, I'm voting on the affirmative, but I do think we do need to, at some point, take a look at the terms of officers. I mean, I'm in a unique position. I've served as chairman 2 different times of the town council and 2 different times of this organization. And I think to grow leadership, it's really also important that we have folks in the pipeline. In the town council, for both the times I've served on it, we rotated year after year, and I can remember a couple of the members saying, oh, I can't do this, and sure enough, they get in there and they do a very good job. So I think giving more people experience, and I know the argument that the school board is more complicated. Well, I've done both, and it's a little bit more complicated, but I do think that in the long term that rotation of more people through these offices is probably a good thing, but I'm very pleased to vote in the affirmative on this thing, but as I say, the unique position I've had that, you know, it ain't that complicated.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone else have any? Mike?
I think Peter makes a lot of sense, and so I think that's something we should consider going forward for the future years. I do just want to say to thank both of you for being willing to do it again. I so deeply appreciate your leadership over an incredibly challenging year. I am quite happy to vote in the affirmative, so I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I also think that both of you have made an impeccable team. Kevin, I think you're one of the finest finance chairs and vice chairs that we have seen, and Tyler, I think you led this district with heart, compassion, empathy, and just a real clear focus on the students. So I think this will be another great year for leadership.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. And Kevin, happy to serve alongside you once again this year, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Next, we vote to approve, or a motion to approve a resolution to create a joint ad hoc committee with Cumberland and North Yarmouth boards.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Oh.
And Mike, did you want to talk to this at all, or it was in our packet?
Yeah, and I'd like to read it out loud for the public. So this is based on what we talked about last time to show that the MSAD 51 Board of Directors is supportive of creating a ad hoc joint standing committee with the Town Council of Cumberland and the Select Board of North Yarmouth, so that we have consistent, effectively official communication between the 3 bodies. It's something that I think we need. It's something that Peter pointed out had been done in the past, and it's not currently being done. So drafted this resolution, which I will read to you now. Whereas the Board of Directors in MSAD 51 believes that our success as a district hinges on our ability to effectively coordinate with the towns of Cumberland and North Yarmouth. Whereas the Board of Directors of MSAD 51 believes that successful coordination results from strong, trusting relationships and full transparency. Whereas the Board of Directors of MSAD 51 deeply values our history and working relationship with the towns of Cumberland and North Yarmouth and their council and select board respectively. Whereas the Board of Directors of MSAD 51 asserts that now is an especially important time to strengthen the bonds between the district and the council and select board. Now be it resolved that the Board of Directors of MSAD 51 supports establishing a joint ad hoc committee with the Cumberland Town Council and North Yarmouth Select Board. Now be it resolved that the Board of Directors of MSAD 51 will assign a board member to collaborate with the Cumberland Town Council and North Yarmouth Select Board to develop the proper mechanisms such as scheduling and attendance. Dated June 14th, 2021.
Thank you, Mike. Any other further discussion?
Just a question, Mike, is this, have the other organizations seen this, or are they party to it?
They haven't seen the resolution. This was meant to be as a statement that we want to do this. I have had the chance to talk to Bill Shane, the town manager at Cumberland, and Bob Vale, the incoming chair of the Cumberland Town Council. I haven't had a chance, and this is completely on me, to talk to the North Yarmouth Select Board, but I'm hoping one of our North Yarmouth board members could help introduce me to talk to them. But the reception from Cumberland was very positive.
I'd be very happy to support that. Having one of the gentlemen here today, the one that said that our board was sad, was actually one of the select board members over there. So I would like to see if we can ensure that that transparency includes decorum whenever possible.
I appreciate that.
And I'd be happy to relay that message.
That'd be great. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Kevin, for pushing this along. All in favor? Excellent, thank you. And before we adjourn the meeting or vote to adjourn, I just want to say congratulations to the end of the year, to the students, to the parents, to the staff, to our board, to Jeff, to Scott, everybody. This was a year. And tomorrow is the last day of school for everybody. And that should be a celebration. We should hear people celebrating throughout our towns. Everyone deserves to feel like they have accomplished something this year. And so I look forward to having some new board members. I'm sad to lose you both, but I look forward to a more, or let's say a less challenging year, or a different type of challenge. So a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you so much. Don't forget we have to sign with Scott.